All right, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday to you. I'm going to get to the public money and the sharp money here in a second. Want to spend a minute or two recapping last week. Finished strong yesterday, so overall 11-8 since I decided to handicap the Orioles every single day. Started off 7-2 Friday and Saturday, no great, no good at all. And then yesterday was good. So 11-8. Looking forward to doing it. Looking forward to see where I end up. First time I've ever really done betting like this at all. So I'm excited. I'll have my picks out. One thing that I do want to touch on that I made a slight mistake, not a slight mistake, pretty big mistake. I guess it was Saturday, is I got to wait until the lineup comes out because I thought Adley was just catching Saturday because he didn't catch on Friday. Whatever. I don't know if it necessarily impacted how Kramer was going to pitch, but got to wait until the lineup comes out. So the picks might be closer until 3:30, 4 o'clock during the week. Just heads up on that. So 11-8. We'll see where we end up. Keep track of it. And I'm working as hard as I can here to get somebody ready for the NBA playoffs. I think I have the right person. Got a follow-up interview this afternoon. The NBA, we got the play-in tournament is this week, and then the actual playoffs start on Saturday. So that is my goal. Regardless, I'll be handicapping the NBA playoffs. I'm excited to do that. We'll see what the matchups are and have a longer podcast on that later in the week. So, all right. Here we go. Public money, sharp money. I promised myself to just relax here, get my thoughts out 10 to 15 minutes without getting all amped up and frustrated because the passion that comes from this is, and I guess that's where I'll start, right? The passion that comes from explaining why the myth of public betting is because it's one of the tools that's used to sell sports betting picks or to explain away losses or to justify why you should be listening to me. And it's a lazy way of doing research. It's a lazy way of working, and it's just inaccurate. So let me start with where we're at with sports betting now, and maybe public money and sharp money was applicable a long time ago. And that's something we can talk about at another time. But currently, right now, let me just explain why it just doesn't exist. Public money and line movement are two different things. So let's just start with public money, sharp money, and why it just doesn't exist. There's no such thing as public money. There just isn't, right? Everybody that bets is a part of the public. There's not a special group of people that are sharp bettors that know what's going on, that single-handedly move lines. That just doesn't exist. Anybody can move lines if you have enough money to bet on the games. So now that betting is legalized in so many places, there's so much action every single day on all of these games that when you see lines move dramatically, that is because money is coming in on one side. It just doesn't mean that you have any idea exactly where the money's coming in. You just don't. So when you classify it as public money, um, it's hard for me to like prove a negative, right? Because there's just no way that you can say, hey, this is where I know the money's coming from. And this isn't just me saying this out loud based on, you know, just betting on sports for a long time. This is me betting on sports for a long time and working in the industry. I worked with a lot of guys that are handicappers that sell their picks. I've been around sports books. I've seen a ton of money being wagered. I've myself bet a lot of money on games. This is just one of those things that if you know, you know. And if you don't, I'm trying to help you. If you know better and you're BSing about it, then that's where my frustration comes from. Maybe some people just don't know any better, and that's what I want to drive home. So let's see. When somebody is betting, let's say, an exorbitant amount of money, just we pick a round number, we'll say a couple $100,000 on a game that's where it's going to move the line. One person's doing that, one bet comes in. The instinct typically is when one person is betting a couple $100,000 on a game, and you'll hear people say reverse line movement. And what they're referring to is to say that the majority of the bet slips, right? The majority of the people betting on the game are going on team A. Okay. But then there's these big wagers coming in. One guy in particular betting a couple $100,000, maybe another guy's betting $100,000. So there's more money being wagered on team B, but there's more betting tickets on team A. So then what happens is this theory, this logic is the line is moving towards where the money is, because it always does, but the betting tickets are going the other way, right? So therefore, they would call this reverse line movement, excuse me, and bet where the money's going. And in theory, that sounds great. And in theory, if you work this all the way through, you're betting against the majority of the public, of the betting public, and you're betting where the smart, sharp money, right? A few guys that know better and a bunch of people like us that just have no idea what we're doing. Okay. And if you work that all the way through, most people lose. So therefore, betting against them is the right thing to do. Okay, so that's the theory that it makes complete sense if you're not willing to challenge it. And if you follow the theory all the way through, what it leads to is a justification of why you lose, because you say, hey, I have my money in the smart area. Follow me, trust me, bet with me, buy my picks, whatever the reason is. They're selling something. Okay, trust me, they're selling something. And the logic is, I know where the money is. I know better than you on which teams to take. It's less about the games. It's less about watching the games. It's more simply about just knowing where the money's going and betting against the overwhelming betting public. Follow it through. Great. So it's a justification for why you lost. And then secondly, it's used to sell something. And then maybe the worst thing about it is it makes it sound like that it's an easy way to handicap the games. Like all of a sudden you don't have to do like in maybe every other area of work, right? People out here working as hard as they can to do something. And now sports betting, it's easy. All you have to do is figure out where the betting public's going and then where the smart people are going, the guys that always win. And all right, so now that I'm done now that I'm done I guess articulating that theory, let's just poke a hole in it calmly, one step at a time. So first step is tracking where this money's going. So the theory that I let out, right, which is, hey, the betting slips are going here, but the big bets are going on the other way, right? Betting slips on team A, betting big money on team B. Where are we getting that information from? Who's reporting on it? That's the first thing, whether it's any kind of story, where am I getting my information from? So that information is coming from two places typically. First place it's coming from that should be easy to say, I don't know if I'm going to believe it, is going to be the sports books. That's going to be people that are taking action, whether it's DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, ESPN, you name it. At this point, everybody's in bed with sports books, one way or the other. They're either taking the bets, they're taking advertising. So first thought we have to say to ourselves is, okay, do they have to report the truth? It's the same thing as the news, right? Do they have to report the truth? No, they don't. So on each story, what's the punishment if the guy on the television or the radio or the newspaper lies about a story or exaggerates something? There's no real punishment. There's no being held accountable for it. And it's the same thing with this. So they don't have to report exactly where the money's going in real time. They just don't. They simply do not. These companies have to file all kinds of things. They're regulated to the T. There's so many different things that are going on that they have to report on before, during, and after every single game. One thing they do not have to report on during a game or before a game ever, 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 ever is where the money's going in real time. They don't have to do that. So if they're putting that information out there, there's a great chance And it's just good business, right? Like if they want bets to go a certain way because they're getting more money on a certain team for whatever reason, they're going to influence bets to go a certain way. So they don't have to report exactly where the money's going. So that's the first thing. All right. So besides the sports books, who we just can't trust in that situation, who else is, excuse me one second. I got to remind myself to breathe here. All right. So, secondly, who's reporting on it? It would be content people, people that are in the sports betting news for whatever reason. They might not know any better. They might be getting information that is misleading, or they frankly know better and they just need content. Like I said, it's a popular thing to make yourself sound like you know more about sports betting than you just have to do the work and actually watch the games and really do the work. So therefore, all those companies, and I don't even want to call them out because it's just, I don't know, it's not good business. It's probably going to leave other companies out anyway. But there's a ton of them, and I'm guilty of peeking at it too, especially when I first started betting because it's hard not to. They're like, hey, this is where the betting money is going. Like this is they're barely charging you any money. Some cases it's free. Anyway, they have no same thing. They're not being regulated to report the truth. So it's too when you're betting your own money and you're saying, hey, I'm betting significant money here. I'm working hard. What's the logic here for making a bet? And I just want to kill the myth that you should look where the public money's going versus the sharp money. It just doesn't exist. The people that you would think are sharp bettors you would laugh. You would just be like they're calling themselves that. They don't have to go through training. They don't have to be licensed. There are no regulations. And that's why this industry is just full of crap because anybody can call themselves anything. And if you have a good enough marketing or you have some fame or you have some lucky bets or you have something, it makes it easier. I mean, I can tell you stories on top of stories on top of stories. Like the number one story of how I got started in this business is I didn't even know this is another podcast at another time. We probably don't even know if I should talk about it, but whatever. Started saying it, so I may as well finish my sentence. But I got into this business by selling, without even knowing, Billy Walters sports betting picks. And that's for those of you that do know or Billy Walters is, then I don't need to explain. If you don't, just Google him. That's the most famous sports bettor. So in my very early 20s, I was quickly introduced to the world. And I'm just telling you that the number one thing that used to exist that doesn't exist now is that you can bet in so many places. So the sharp money, the theory behind it is literally you can only bet in certain places. So there were certain sports bettors led by Billy Walters, right? The most famous one that would be successful, right? There's certain people that are successful, at least on certain games. And there's always fishy things going on, especially in the 70s and the 80s when the regulation wasn't the same. So sharp betting, the theory all behind it comes from certain guys would make certain bets, and the casinos would know about it, and that was considered, hey, those are the sharp bettors, right? Like that's just a thing. So again, I'm not fully educated on it. It's before my time. I'm happy to talk about that more, but ever since I've been in the industry with the offshore betting, and now the fact that it's legal, it's impossible to actually know where the money's coming from. So I can't tell you how many times there's been individuals in small games that have bet a lot of money that are not sharp bettors that are moving the lines. So that theory that I just gave you here, where the betting slips are going one way, but the money's going another way, it can just be some random guy. It doesn't have to be anything besides that. Now, in certain situations, if you can find a sharp way of betting, then great. If you want to use that adjective sharp, and maybe one of those things is watching line movement, and saying, so for example, let's excuse me, pivot into line movement and why that's extremely relative, but you have to understand why lines are moving and the purpose of it. So let's just do a football example. That's always easier. And let's just do Ravens Steelers because that's easy. And we'll say Ravens are favored by 3 points at home against the Steelers, and that's the opening line Monday when we first look at it. So a sharp way of betting is to say, hey, I want to bet the Ravens at -2.5. That would be a sharp way of looking at it. I don't want to bet them at -3. Now, as the line starts to move or doesn't move Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, let's say it moves a half a point or a point one way or the other. The line is going to move for one of two reasons. One reason is football related stuff. So let's say there's just nothing football related. That could mean, and it has to be something significant: quarterback, big injury, weather that dramatically favors one team, coaching firing, something dramatic that would change the line. Because in a football game, all the work and research is really done ahead of time by the guys that make the lines, and they're trying to get 50-50 action. So for them to miss something, meaning there's so much money coming in one way, then either it was football related and something happened during the week, line moved, and that's why, or simply there was more money that came in, right? So it's not football related. Something happened. They didn't expect an injury. Boom, it changes just like that. So let's just say, for sake of argument, because what we're talking about is line movement, not injuries related, right? So, all right, no injuries, but the line moves. Why does it move? Does it move because there's more money? Is there more tickets? Don't know. I don't want to read about it. Don't care. That's it. It is not part of the equation. The only thing I care about is, can I get the value that I want? And what I want is Ravens -2.5, period. That's what I want. I've handicapped the game. I've thought about the game. It has nothing to do with where the line's going to move. It just doesn't. So if the line moves in my favor, great. Perfect. Gets down to 2.5. I'm going to bet it. That's a sharp thing to do. Maybe the sharp thing to do is to monitor the line, bet it as soon as it happens. That's great. Maybe ultimately the sharp thing to do is to simply buy half a point when we get to Sunday. The line just doesn't move. That's a sharp, smart, educated way of looking at it, because you can bet what you want. So it's that would be the thought process going to a game: is what's the line that I want? And that's where teasers come into play, buying a half a point, but trying to skirt the system and figuring out where the money is going and then jumping on the right side of that is completely the wrong thing to do. It doesn't exist. People that are telling you otherwise, I promise they can't back it up. I promise you that either they just don't know any better, or they will skirt around it because they do know any better, and it just threatens their way of content and their way of thinking. But it's one of the biggest problems that I had working in the industry, because I would meet people and I'm like, there's no short way of doing this. Like, there just isn't. Like, you have no idea where the lines are moving and why they're moving. And there's certain things that we know, right? Like old school way of, like, we can built into the system, the Cowboys and Yankees get more action, but yeah, they get more action because they have more fans. And sure, that's something to keep in mind. But the idea that there's private money on these games um, is really the wrong way to go. I guess I'll end on this note. Maybe the best way of, I think I've said this before, but the best way of doing public, if you really wanted to get an idea of the general public, find 20 to 30 friends of yours that you like their opinion enough, but whatever, they follow it, they know sports. Just get all their opinions, have them give you all their bets all the time, and if they have 90% going some way, yeah, then go the opposite of them. Like, if you want to be contrarian and think of it that way, then you have to get your own sample size of your own friends, your own people, understand them enough to know what you're thinking about and when you're betting against them instead of just thinking you're betting against the public. And lastly, the point of rebranding and doing this is trying to help you figure out, all right, what's some good strategies. And I'm going to say this over and over and over again, it's the coach in me, but there's no easy way out. Like there's just not. You're going to have to do as much work as you possibly can, or just do it for fun. So the money management is going to be the main thing that I'm going to talk about leading in the football season, which is budget, figuring out what your bet size should be, why it should be that size, and so forth. Because without money management, you'll have no chance of being successful. But first, you have to figure out, well, how do I even attack this game? So, for example, this Orioles Twins, it started with it's like how much information can I take from the Twins before I even begin to start handicapping? So, if I'm just going to do that with every single series, it would be too much work. It doesn't mean that people that are giving out 10, 15 games don't know anything. I think last time when I spoke, and this will be my last point, is I made it sound like maybe people that give out 10 games a day, are morons and they don't know what they're doing and blah blah blah. That's not the point. They might know a ton about baseball. They might even be doing a ton of work, but the work that are doing, it's impossible to do the right work in order to have enough of an opinion to bet significant amount of money. That's my Ryan's take on it, right? Like that's my personal take, which is the amount of work that's required to have a strong enough opinion to bet significant money on these games is a lot. So for me to just do the Orioles every day is a lot. It's a lot. And I hope I hit 60%. Like that's my goal. The NBA playoffs, it's going to be a lot. Like I'm not going to play a ton of games here. There's going to be certain series I just give up on. I'm like, I'm not even handicapping that series. And there's other people that are going to do 10, 15, 20 games a day. And I'm not just talking about, my previous partner or people I used to work for in the industry. I'm just talking about regular, average anybody. Like there's just, that is a typical thing to do. And if you're doing it for throwaway money, no big deal. But if you're doing it as a volume better, I am going to throw you in the other direction. I'm going to scream about it and yell about it because I don't think it's the right thing to do. And if you're going to subscribe here, you get to get the picks that I'm going to provide. And whoever's going to provide picks, like ultimately, if we have four people providing picks, there's going to be 10, 15, 20 games. So whether it's one person or four people or whatever, there's always games available. And I want to drive home the message, do your own work, take what's being said to you as suggestions. But yeah, if you're going to bet a lot of money on the games, at least call me first. I'd be happy to talk one-on-one and share some more personal stories. But yeah, I'll get out of here. I'm going to do my best here and make sure we win the first game with the Orioles Twins. Like I said, 11-8. It's whatever. The Brewers series, just weird series. I was down on the Brewers, and man, Brewers played well. We're lucky we pulled the game out yesterday, right? Like, glad we did, frankly. But the first two games we had no chance, and yesterday it turned into a 50-50 game with Burns pitching. So glad we won that one. Twins have been struggling, so the odds, Irvin, I see right now is big favorite relative to what you would think he would be, minus like 146, 147. So see where the value is, do the work on the Twins, and yeah, catch you guys most likely tomorrow. We'll see. So have a good day. Appreciate you, and yeah, take care. See ya.